I'm Rachel, 23 years old, and a recent college graduate. I never thought my own mother would be the one to break my heart. I was standing behind the counter at the coffee shop where I worked when my phone buzzed. One text. Message shattered. My world. Locks changed. You don't have a home anymore. My hands trembled as I read those words from the woman who gave birth to me. The woman I thought would always have my back. Before I tell you how my own mother locked me out, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever felt betrayed by someone you love. Growing up in suburban Michigan, my childhood home looked perfect from the outside. The two-story colonial with blue shutters housed myself, my mother Diana, my stepfather Greg, and my half-sister Madison. To neighbors and friends, we seemed like the ideal blended family. Diana married Greg when I was 6, after my biological father left us for his secretary. Madison came along a year later, completing what my mother called our fresh start family. Mom was always particular about appearances. Our house wasn't just clean, it was immaculate. White carpets remained spotless despite Michigan winters, furniture positioned at perfect right angles, family photos ranged by height on the mantel, all of us wearing coordinating outfits, nothing out of place. A clean home reflects a clean mind, Mom would say, inspecting my bedroom with scrutiny. Even as a child, I felt the pressure to maintain her standards. One Christmas, I received cleaning supplies in my stocking. I was 9. Greg, my stepfather, rarely challenged Mom's roles, tall and quiet with thinning hair. He worked as an accountant and preferred peace over confrontation. When Mom's perfectionism became excessive, he would sometimes whisper to me, "Just do what makes her happy, Rachel. It's easier that way." His passive approach frustrated me, but I understood his desire to avoid conflict. Madison, my half-sister, grew up as the golden child. 7 years younger than me, she seemed immune to Mom's criticism. Her messy room received gentle reminders, while mine prompted lectures. Her artistic talents were celebrated while my academic achievements were expected. The double standard was subtle but undeniable. Despite these dynamics, I loved my family. We had good moments too. Summer vacations to Lake Michigan, Sunday dinners with extended family, movie nights with popcorn carefully eaten over napkins. I learned to navigate Mom's expectations and Greg's passivity. I found ways to connect with Madison through her art projects. We were imperfect, but we were family. College offered my first taste of real freedom. At the University of Michigan, I majored in English and discovered who I was outside my mother's shadow. My dorm room could be messy, my schedule could be spontaneous. I made friends who accepted me without conditions. For 4 years, I thrived in this environment, returning home only for major holidays and brief summer visits. Then came graduation in May of 2022, a virtual ceremony due to lingering pandemic restrictions. No triumphant walk across the stage, just me in a rented cap and gown in my apartment, watching names scroll a screen. The anticlimactic end to my college experience was followed by a harsh reality, a tough job market and rising living costs. After applying to 30 publishing companies and literary agencies with no success, I faced difficult decisions. My student loans would come due in 6 months. My savings wouldn't cover first and last month's rent plus security deposit in any decent apartment. My closest friends were moving back home or to cities for entry-level jobs. You can always come home until you find something, Mom suggested during our weekly call. Your old room is just how you left it. The offer surprised me. Mom had converted my bedroom into a guest room within months of my leaving for college. But financial necessity outweighed my hesitation. I calculated I could save enough for my own place in 6 to 8 months while applying for editorial positions. When I arrived home with my packed Honda Civic, Mom greeted me with a tight hug and prepared dinner. My favorite lasagna. Greg helped carry my boxes. Madison even made a welcome home sign, though I noticed she took it down immediately after dinner. "We're so glad to have you back," Mom said, refilling my water glass. Though we should discuss house rules tomorrow. You're an adult now. But this is still our home. I nodded, pushing away the flicker of concern. That first night, I lay in my old bed, now topped with a floral comforter I didn't recognize, and felt a strange mix of gratitude and apprehension. The familiar ceiling above me was comforting, yet something felt off. I dismissed it as simply the adjustment of returning to a childhood space as an adult. Within the first week, I secured a job as a barista at the Daily Grind, a local coffee shop 15 minutes from home. The pay wasn't great, but the schedule was flexible. Allowing time for job applications, I established a routine: morning shift at the coffee shop, afternoons sending resumes, evenings helping with dinner and house chores. Mom seemed pleased with my contribution. "It's nice having another adult around to help," she commented while we washed dishes together. Yet I caught her rearranging the mugs I'd put away, claiming they looked better in a different order. Greg maintained his usual pleasant but distant demeanor, asking about my job search over breakfast before disappearing into his home office. Madison largely avoided me, claiming homework demands kept her busy. Those first few weeks seemed like a reasonable adjustment period. I told myself everyone needed time to find our new dynamic. I was no longer a child, but not quite an independent adult either. This in-between stage would be temporary. Just 6 to 8 months, I reminded myself each night. Then I'd have my own place and my real adult life could begin. How wrong I was. If only I'd recognized the warning signs in those early days. The way Mom inspected my laundry before it went into the washing machine. The pointed comments about my college habits. The growing tension whenever I entered a room where Madison was sitting. But hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. And I was too grateful for the roof over my head to see what was coming. By the third week, the honeymoon period of my homecoming had definitely ended. What started as subtle criticism from my mother evolved into daily disputes about virtually everything I did. My work schedule became a particular point of contention. "You left dirty dishes in the sink again," Mom said one morning, arms crossed as I rushed to get ready for my opening shift. I thought we agreed on kitchen cleanliness. "I got home at 11 last night. Mom, I was going to wash them this morning." I grabbed my car keys, already running late. "This isn't a hotel, Rachel. Your schedule doesn't excuse laziness." The word laziness stung. I was working 30 hours weekly while applying for jobs every day. But arguing would make me late. So I simply apologized and left. The tension lingering behind me like a bad smell, my bedroom became the next battleground. Despite being a legal adult, I'd return home to find evidence of my mother's presence. Drawers slightly ajar, belongings rearranged, bed made differently than I'd left it. When I confronted her about respecting my privacy, her response was immediate. "Privacy? This is my house. Rachel, I need to make sure you're keeping it clean. Yesterday, I found a coffee mug under your bed. The mug had contained water for taking medication the night before." This explanation didn't satisfy her. "Your generation always has excuses. When I was your age, I was already married with a mortgage." These comparisons became frequent. My mother's generation versus mine. Her responsibility versus my perceived entitlement. Her sacrifice versus my supposed comfort. Greg, as expected, remained Switzerland in our escalating Cold War. One night after a particularly heated exchange about laundry schedules, I saw him out in his den. "Is there any way you could talk to Mom? I feel like she's constantly monitoring me," he sighed. Removing his reading glasses. "Your mother likes things a certain way. Rachel, you know that. She's letting you stay here rent-free. Maybe try harder to meet her expectations." His response exemplified his conflict avoidance strategy. Acknowledge my feelings, while ultimately supporting Mom's position. The brief conversation left me feeling more alone. Madison, meanwhile, seemed to relish my difficulties. At 17, she'd become increasingly bold in her disdain for my presence. "Mom, Rachel used my face wash again," she'd call out, despite my having my own products. Rachel's car is blocking the driveway, she'd announce, though I always parked along the curb. Each accusation, true or not, added to Mom's growing list of complaints against me. Madison had realized she could gain favor by reporting my perceived transgressions, and she exploited this advantage mercilessly. I tried adapting to reduce conflict. I cleaned obsessively, leaving no surface unwiped. I created a color-coded calendar tracking my work hours to improve household communication. I stayed at the coffee shop hours after my shift ended, applying for jobs from a corner table rather than at home. I kept my room when home, minimizing my presence in common areas. Nothing seemed enough. One afternoon in my 6th week home, I returned from work to discover several of my books and decor items missing from my room. After searching the house, I found them in a donation box in the garage. "Mom, why are my things in this donation box?" I asked, holding up my college literature anthology and framed concert poster. She barely looked up from her tablet. "I'm decluttering for spring. Those items were collecting dust." "But they're mine. You can't just give away my possessions. They were cluttering the house. That poster doesn't match our decor. And you haven't opened that book since you moved back." The conversation escalated quickly. For the first time since returning home, I raised my voice. "You can't just throw away my things. This is my space too, at least temporarily." Mom's face hardened. "After everything I've done for you, letting you move back when you couldn't support yourself. And this is the gratitude I get, yelling at me in my own home." Her words cut deep, framing my legitimate complaint as ingratitude. Despite feeling wronged, I found myself apologizing, retrieving my belongings quietly, and retreating to my room. Later, I overheard her telling Greg I had an emotional outburst over some old junk. His murmured response was indistinguishable, but contained no defense of me. Tension became my constant companion. Each morning, I'd wake with a knot in my stomach, mentally preparing for whatever criticism awaited. Each evening, I'd delay coming home, driving aimlessly or sitting in parking lots to postpone the inevitable conflict. I began to recognize the mistake I'd made in moving back. But my financial situation remained precarious. My savings had grown, but nowhere near enough for independent living. I felt trapped in a childhood home that no longer welcomed me. Each passive-aggressive comment, each invasion of privacy, each cold shoulder from family members eroded my sense of belonging. The place I once called home was becoming a battleground, and I was losing the war. The true breaking point came 8 weeks after moving home. I returned early from work. My shift canceled due to a water main break at the coffee shop, and walked into my bedroom to find my mother sitting on my bed, my journal open in her hands. Time seemed to freeze. The leather-bound journal, a graduation gift from my college roommate, contained my most private thoughts, entries about job rejections, frustrations with my family situation, even a few mentions of a barista I had a crush on, all exposed to my mother's scrutiny. "What are you doing?" My voice came out higher than intended, shock overriding anger. Mom didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. She closed the journal slowly, methodically, as if finishing an interesting chapter in a novel rather than violating her daughter's privacy. "I was changing your sheets and found this under your pillow," she said calmly. "As your mother, I have a right to know what's happening in your life. That's my private journal. You had no right to read it. Don't take that tone with me. I read some concerning things in here. You called our home a prison and referred to me as controlling. Is that how you really feel after everything I've done for you?" The confrontation escalated rapidly. Every boundary I tried to establish was dismissed. Every point I made about privacy was countered with "my house, my rules." When tears of frustration filled my eyes, Mom called me dramatic, a term she'd used throughout my childhood to invalidate my feelings. Greg arrived home midway through our argument. Instead of mediating, he immediately took Mom's side. "Rachel, your mother is just concerned about you," he said, standing in the doorway. "This is their house, And they have certain expectations while you're staying here. Their house. Not our house. Not my home. The distinction was clear and cutting. In that moment, I understood my status. Not family. But tenant. Not daughter. But burden. Madison appeared behind Greg, feigning concern, but unable to hide her satisfaction at my distress. Is Rachel having another meltdown? She asked innocently, knowing the question would further irritate our mother. Go finish your homework, Madison, Mom instructed before turning back to me. When you've calmed down, we can discuss appropriate boundaries like adults. I retreated to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bathtub, trying to steady my breathing. Through the door, I heard their conversation continue. I'm worried about her, Mom said, voice carrying easily through the thin walls. She seems unstable. All those rejections must be getting to her. She'll figure it out. Greg responded. But maybe we should set clearer guidelines. She's not adjusting well to being back home. She's always been difficult, Mom added. Remember, those teenage years? The attitude. I thought college would mature her. Their words hurt more than they could know. I wasn't difficult. I was desperate for acceptance and autonomy. I wasn't unstable. I was reacting to legitimate violations of privacy and respect. But in their narrative, I was the problem. That evening, I texted my friend Amber. Family situation worse than expected. Could use a drink and sympathetic air. We met at a local bar, where I unloaded the entire situation. Amber listened, outraged on my behalf. You need to get out of there, Rach. That's toxic. I know, I agreed. But I don't have enough saved yet. You can crash on my couch sometimes if you need space, she offered. It's not much, but it's drama-free. Her offer became a lifeline. I began staying late at work, then spending evenings at Amber's apartment, returning home only to sleep. When Mom questioned my absences, I cited networking events and job research, lies that bought temporary peace. The situation at home continued deteriorating. Mom implemented new house rules clearly targeted at me. A curfew of 10:30 on weeknights, ridiculous for a 23-year-old adult. A bathroom schedule limiting my shower time to 15 minutes between specific hours. Kitchen restrictions requiring approval before using appliances outside meal times, mandatory. Family dinners 3 times weekly, during which I endured subtle criticisms disguised as concern. These rules didn't apply to Madison, who came and went as she pleased, used the bathroom whenever she wanted, and could raid the refrigerator at midnight without comment. The double standard was glaring, but pointing it out only resulted in accusations of jealousy toward my younger sister. Madison respects our home, Mom would say. She's earned our trust. The implied message was clear. I hadn't earned trust. I wasn't respecting their home. I was the outsider in my own family. My relationship with Madison, never particularly close, deteriorated completely. She began reporting my movements to Mom, like a prison guard, seemingly enjoying my discomfort. When I confronted her privately, asking why she was targeting me, her response was chilling. I like having Mom and Dad to myself. She said with a shrug, things were better before you came back. They're always tense now. That's not my fault, I protested. Isn't it? You're the one who failed at adulting so hard you had to move back home. Her words struck a nerve because they echoed my own insecurities. Had I failed? Was I the problem? The seeds of self-doubt planted by my family began to grow, choking out my self-confidence. Each day became exercise in avoidance and appeasement. I walked on eggshells, monitoring my tone, my expressions, my very presence in rooms. The mental toll was exhausting. Night after night, I lay awake planning escape routes, financial, emotional, physical. But solutions remain just out of reach, like stars visible but untouchable. The home that should have been my safe harbor had become the source of my greatest stress. The family that should have supported me had become my opposition. And the mother who should have loved me unconditionally had become my biggest critic. Something had to give. And soon, after nearly 3 months of mounting tension, The situation reached a breaking point one rainy Thursday evening. I had picked up an extra shift at the daily grind. Covering for a coworker with the flu, the additional hours meant extra money for my escape fund, so I'd accepted despite already working a morning shift. I arrived home around 11:15, exhausted after a 14-hour workday. The house was dark except for the porch light left on, a small courtesy I appreciated. I unlocked the door quietly, hoping to avoid waking anyone. But as I headed toward my bedroom, I noticed something odd. My door was open, light spilling into the hallway. What I found inside stopped me cold. My bed was gone, my dresser emptied. Most of my belongings had been packed into cardboard boxes stacked against one wall. The room had been partially transformed. A desk now occupied the space where my bed had stood, and a new ergonomic chair sat before it. I stood frozen, trying to process what I was seeing, when my mother appeared in the doorway behind me. "Oh good, you're home," she said casually, as if nothing unusual was happening. "I was going to text you about the changes. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "You've packed up my room. Where's my bed?" "In the garage. I've set up a space for you there." She spoke matter-of-factly. I needed this room for my home office. With so many community board meetings going virtual, I need a proper workspace. The garage. She had moved me to the garage, the uninsulated, concrete-floored garage. The housed garden equipment and holiday decorations. I brushed past her and headed downstairs, out the side door to the attached garage. Sure enough, my bed frame had been reassembled in one corner, alongside my nightstand. A space heater sat unplugged nearby. "It's temporary," Mom said, following me, "until you find your own place." I put down some rugs to make it cozier. The thin throw rugs did little to soften the concrete floor. A single bare bulb provided harsh, overhead lighting. The space smelled of motor oil and lawn fertilizer. This wasn't a bedroom. It was a storage area with a bed. "You can't seriously expect me to sleep here," I said, disbelief turning to anger. "It's not even legal to use the garage as a bedroom. There's no proper insulation, no smoke detector." "No, don't be dramatic, Rachel. People convert garages all the time. If you're that unhappy with it, perhaps it's motivation to accelerate your job search." I was too exhausted, too shocked to argue further. With leaden limbs, I made the bed with sheets found in one box, plugged in the space heater, and spent my first night in the garage, fully clothed under blankets, listening to the occasional screaming of what I feared were mice. The next morning, I overheard a conversation that confirmed my suspicions about my family's intentions. I had returned to the house to use the bathroom. The garage had none, and paused outside the kitchen when I heard my name. Rachel seemed upset about the garage situation, Greg was saying. "She'll adjust," Mom replied. "Besides, it's encouraging her to leave sooner. We talked about this. She needs a push." "I know, but the garage is pretty rough. Diana, maybe we should have discussed it with her first and have her argue and guilt trip us." "No, sometimes parents have to make the hard decisions. She's 23, not 16. She should have her own place by now." Madison's thrilled to have her craft space back. Exactly, everyone wins. Rachel gets motivation to grow up, Madison gets her space, and I get my office. Everyone wins except me, I thought bitterly. Their conversation confirmed what I'd suspected. This wasn't about needing space. It was their deliberate strategy to push me out, regardless of my financial readiness. Despite the revelation, I tried to adapt to my new garage accommodations. I bought battery-operated lamps for better lighting. I found a small area rug at Goodwill to place beside the bed. I used air fresheners to combat the persistent garage smells. Each adaptation felt like both a small victory and a humiliating concession. The final straw came. 3 days later, I had been using my laptop in the kitchen. The garage had no Wi-Fi reception. When Madison called me to help with something in her room, I left my computer open on the kitchen table, expecting to return shortly. When I came back 15 minutes later, I found my laptop on the floor. Screen cracked, water pooling around it. Madison stood nearby, a half-empty glass in hand. "Oops," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I accidentally knocked into it. The accident seemed suspiciously convenient. My laptop contained all my job applications, resume versions, and writing samples. It was my lifeline to potential employment and independence. You did this on purpose," I accused, dropping to my knees to assess the damage. "It was an accident," Madison insisted, but the slight smile betrayed her. When my parents arrived home, I expected them to hold Madison accountable, to at least make her contribute to repair costs. Instead, I received a lecture. "You shouldn't leave expensive items unattended," Mom said. "Madison said it was an accident." "She's lying. She called me upstairs specifically to get me away from my laptop." "Are you calling your sister a liar?" Greg intervened. "She made a mistake." "Rachel, people make mistakes. Why are you always defending her? She deliberately damaged my property. And you're acting like I'm the problem." "There you go again, playing the victim," Mom sighed. "Always someone else's fault, isn't it?" Something broke inside me then. The last thread of hope that my family might support me, might treat me fairly. I retreated to the garage, sat on my makeshift bed, and finally allowed myself to sob. Deep, body-shaking cries that released months of accumulated hurt and betrayal. When the tears subsided, a strange calm replaced them. I called Amber. "I can't do this anymore," I told her. "Is your couch offer still good? Just for a few days while I figure things out." "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "Come tonight if you want." I packed a duffel bag with essentials, clothes, toiletries, important documents. My laptop, despite its cracked screen, still functioned enough to use with an external monitor Amber said I could borrow. I would come back for the rest of my things once I had a plan. When I emerged from the garage with my packed bag, Mom watched from the kitchen doorway. "Going somewhere?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "I need some space. I'm staying at Amber's for a few days." "Running away from your problems won't solve them," she said dismissively. "I'm not running away. I'm removing myself from a toxic situation." "Toxic? This is your family, Rachel. We've done everything to help you." I chose not to argue. "I'll be back for my other things soon." As I reached the front door, Mom's parting words followed me. "Maybe it's better this way." Those 5 words carried a finality that chilled me. She wasn't sad to see me go. She was relieved. In that moment, I realized our relationship might never recover from this breach. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted it to. 3 days passed at Amber's apartment. Her 1-bedroom place was cramped with both of us there. But the atmosphere was peaceful. No criticism, no walking on eggshells, no feeling unwelcome. I slept on her lumpy couch, contributed to groceries with my limited funds, and began researching affordable housing options on her desktop computer. I had texted Mom the first night, simply letting her know I was safe. Her reply was brief, "Fine." No questions about when I'd return or if I was okay. The silence spoke volumes. On the 4th day, I was working the morning shift at the Daily Grind. The cafe was busy with the usual pre-work crowd. Business people grabbing lattes, college students fueling study sessions, remote workers seeking Wi-Fi and ambient noise. I moved on autopilot, steaming milk and pulling espresso shots while my mind worked through housing calculations. At 9:32, during a brief lull, I checked my phone. One new message from Mom. My stomach tightened as I opened it. Locks changed. "You don't have a home anymore. Your remaining things are in garbage bags on the porch. Pick them up by tonight, or they go to Goodwill." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood. But the message was clear. I had been finally evicted from my family home. A second text followed. "We need to move on with our lives. Your decision to leave showed us you don't want to be part of this family anymore." The injustice was staggering. They had pushed me out at every turn, made living there unbearable. And now we're framing my temporary stay at Amber's as abandonment. They were disowning me while simultaneously casting me as the one who had left them. I rushed to the employee bathroom, locked the door, and slid down against it until I sat on the cold tile floor. The panic attack hit without warning. Chest tightening, breathing shallow, vision tunneling. I hugged my knees, trying to remember grounding techniques from a college wellness workshop. A knock at the door eventually pulled me back to reality. "Rachel, you've been in there a while. Everything okay?" It was Tanya, the manager, her voice concerned. "I'll be right out," I managed, splashing cold water on my face and trying to compose myself. When I emerged, Tanya took one look at my reddened eyes and pulled me aside. "What happened?" "Family emergency," I said vaguely. "I might need to leave early." "Take all the time you need," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "We're not busy. Want to talk about it?" I hesitated, embarrassed to admit my situation. But Tanya's kind eyes broke through my resistance, and the whole story came tumbling out. Moving home, the escalating tension, the gouage bedroom, and finally, the devastating text. "They changed the locks," I finished, showing her the message. "I don't have anywhere to go except Amber's couch, and I can't stay there forever." Tanya's expression shifted from sympathy to determination. "First things first, you need to get your belongings. Do you have a car?" "No, I've been using Amber's, but she's at work." "Take my car," she said, fishing keys from her pocket. "It's the blue Honda in the back lot. Get your things, bring them back here if you need to. We'll figure out the next steps together." Her kindness nearly broke me again, but I held it together, accepting her keys with trembling hands. "Thank you. I'll be back soon." The drive to my former home took 15 minutes that felt like hours. With each mile, anxiety built in my chest. What would I say if they were home? What condition would my belongings be in? How had it come to this? When I pulled up, the house looked unchanged. Still perfect from the outside, still hiding its dysfunction behind manicured shrubs and clean siding. True to Mom's word, black garbage bags set pile on the covered porch, protected from the light rain that had started falling. I parked on the street and approached cautiously, half expecting the front door to open. It remained closed. I began loading bags into Tanya's Honda, not bothering to check contents, just wanting to complete this humiliating task as quickly as possible. On my third trip between the car and porch, movement at the living room window caught my eye. Mom stood watching, arms crossed. Our eyes met through the glass, and I froze, garbage bag in hand. "Can we talk?" I called, voice catching. "Please." She approached the window and opened it a few inches. "There's nothing to discuss. Rachel, you made your choice. I didn't choose this. I just needed space for a few days. You're the one who changed the locks. You abandoned your family. You left without a proper plan, without consideration for how it would affect us. Affect you. You moved me to the garage. Madison destroyed my laptop. You read my private journal. How was I supposed to react? More dramatic accusations. This is exactly why this situation isn't working." Her voice remained eerily calm. "You're not ready for the responsibility of being part of this family. Being part of a family shouldn't require giving up basic dignity and respect." Behind her, I glimpsed Greg, hovering uncertainly in the background. Madison stood beside him, watching the confrontation with undisguised interest, almost excitement. "We've made our decision," Mom continued. "You have your things. We need to move forward separately." "Mom, please." My voice broke. "Where am I supposed to go? You're an adult. Rachel, figure it out like the rest of us had to." With that, she closed the window and pulled the curtain, ending the conversation and effectively removing me from her view, from her life. I stood there in the rain, garbage bag still in hand, as the reality of my situation crashed over me. My family had discarded me as easily as the possessions now stuffed in plastic bags. 23 years of shared history, erased by a text message and a change lock. The sound of a door opening next door startled me. Mrs. Patel, our longtime neighbor, stepped onto her porch, concern etched on her face. "Rachel, are you all right, dear?" I couldn't help overhearing. Mortification added to my distress. Our neighbors had witnessed my rejection. My humiliation laid bare for the street to see. "I'm fine, Mrs. Patel. Just picking up some things." I hurried back to loading bags, head down. "If you need anything," she offered uncertainly. "Thank you," I managed, not meeting her eyes. The pity in her voice was unbearable. When the last bag was loaded, I took one final look at the house. Home? No, not home anymore. Just a building that contained people who had decided I wasn't worth keeping in their lives. I drove back to the coffee shop in a daze, parked Tanya's car, and sat motionless behind the wheel. Rain tapped on the roof, a gentle rhythm at odds with the chaos inside me. I had $437 to my name, a cracked laptop, belongings in garbage bags, no permanent place to sleep, and a family who had locked me out of their lives. I had never felt more alone. Eventually, Tanya came out with an umbrella, opened my car door, and helped me inside. She set me up in the back office with a hot chocolate and call Amber, explaining the situation. "You can stay with me tonight," Amber insisted when I got on the phone. "We'll figure something out." But I could hear the hesitation in her voice. Her tiny apartment wasn't meant for two people long term. Her generosity had limits, as did anyone's. That night, back on Amber's couch, I unpacked the garbage bags. Most of my clothes were there. Thankfully, some books, a few framed photos, one with cracked glass, me at high school graduation, Mom's arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling. I turned it face down. Some items were conspicuously missing. My grandmother's pearl earrings, my high school yearbooks, the handmade quilt from my childhood, whether forgotten, deliberately withheld, or simply not valued enough to save, I would never know. They were gone, like my place in the family. I curled up under borrowed blankets, staring at Amber's ceiling, and wondered how everything had gone so terribly wrong. Sleep evaded me as my mind replayed every interaction, every argument, every cold word exchanged. Had there been signs earlier in my life that my place in the family was conditional? Had I truly been as difficult as they claimed? Was this somehow my fault? The spiral of self-doubt was interrupted only by exhaustion, which finally pulled me into fitful sleep around 3 in the morning. I dreamed of locked doors and endless hallways, searching for a room that would welcome me. The days following my eviction blended together in a fog of shock and grief. I continued sleeping on Amber's couch, trying to make myself as unobtrusive as possible. I used the bathroom only when she wasn't home. I kept my belongings neatly packed in the corner of her living room. I washed dishes immediately after using them. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was maintaining the same hypervigilance I developed in my mother's house, afraid that one misstep would result in another rejection. My performance at work suffered. I mixed up orders, forgot to restock supplies, and once burst into tears when a customer complained about too much foam on their latte. Tanya pulled me aside after that incident. "Rachel, I'm worried about you," she said, leading me to the back office. "You're clearly not okay." "I'm fine," I insisted automatically. "Just tired." "You're not fine. And that's completely understandable given what you're going through." She sat across from me, her expression serious but kind. "But I need to be honest. I can't keep you on shifts if this continues. It's affecting the business." The prospect of losing my only source of income sent panic through me. "Please, I need this job. I'll do better. I promise." "I'm not firing you," Tanya clarified. "I'm suggesting you take a few days off to get your situation stabilized. And I want to help." Help? The word sounded foreign after months of navigating my family's hostility. Genuine offers of assistance seemed suspicious, almost dangerous to accept. "Why would you help me?" I asked, the question escaping before I could filter it. Tanya's eyebrows rose. "Because you're a person in need. Because I've been where you are." That caught my attention. "You have?" She nodded, leaning back in her chair. Different circumstances, same result. When I was 24, my parents kicked me out because they didn't approve of my girlfriend. I lived in my car for 2 weeks before my boss at the time noticed something was wrong. Her revelation stunned me. Tanya always seemed so put together, so confident. I couldn't imagine her homeless, rejected by family. What did you do? I asked. I accepted help when it was offered, she said pointedly, which brings me to my suggestion. Do you know Jessica, who works afternoon shifts? I nodded. Jessica was in her early 30s, with a sleeve of tattoos and a perpetual supply of fascinating stories from her former life as a touring musician. Jessica mentioned needing a roommate last week. Her spare bedroom is small, but it's a real bedroom with a door that locks and windows that open. She's charging well below market rate because she prefers renting to someone she knows is reliable. Hope flickered. Dangerous, fragile hope. You think she'd consider me? I already talked to her. She's interested if you are. The relief was so overwhelming I couldn't speak for a moment. A real room, not a gauge, not a couch, but an actual bedroom in a stable living situation. I don't know how to thank you. I finally managed. Thank me by taking those days off, meeting with Jessica, and getting yourself settled. Tanya replied. Also, I want you to take these. She handed me a business card for a community health center. They offer sliding scale counseling. What you're going through is traumatic. Rachel, professional support helps. That evening, I met Jessica at her apartment, a 2-bedroom unit above our bookstore in the older part of town. The spare room was indeed small, but clean and bright with pale yellow walls and a built-in bookshelf. Rent is $500 including utilities. Jessica explained. I know that's still tight on a barista's salary, but it's the best I can do. It would leave me with very little after expenses. But it was possible. I could pick up extra shifts. I could look for a second job. Most importantly, it was a stable living situation with someone who knew my circumstances and wasn't judging me for them. When can I move in? I asked. Jessica grinned. How's tomorrow sound? The following day, Amber helped move my garbage bag belongings to Jessica's apartment. As we unloaded the last bag, she hugged me tightly. I'm going to miss our late night talks, she said. But I'm so happy you found a real place. I couldn't have survived without you, I told her, meaning it completely. You were there when no one else was. That's what friends do, she replied simply. Setting up my new room was both therapeutic and painful. Each item unpacked reminded me of what I'd lost, not just material possessions, but the security of family, the foundation I'd always taken for granted. I arranged my books alphabetically, hung what clothes I had in the small closet, and placed my cracked screen laptop on the desk Jessica had found at a yard sale. It wasn't home yet, but it was safe. No one would judge my cleaning habits here. No one would read my journal or move my belongings without permission. No one would make me feel unwelcome or unwanted. The relief of that realization brought me to tears as I sat on my new bed. A futon Jessica had helped me purchase from a thrift store. Over the next few weeks, I established new routines, work at the coffee shop, home to my room at Jessica's, occasional dinner with Amber, one tentative counseling session at the community center, then another, then weekly appointments with Teresa, a therapist who specialized in family estrangement. What you're experiencing is grief, Teresa explained. During our 3rd session, you've lost your family, your home, and your sense of security simultaneously. It's natural to feel devastated, but I keep wondering if it was my fault. I admitted, maybe if I'd tried harder, been cleaner, more grateful from what you've described. Your mother's behavior shows consistent patterns of control and emotional manipulation. Your stepfather enabled it. Your sister learned from it. This isn't about you being messy or ungrateful. It's about family dynamics that became increasingly toxic. Teresa introduced me to concepts I'd never considered: narcissistic family, systems, scapegoating, golden child dynamics. She gave me books about daughters of controlling mothers. She validated my experiences when I doubted my own perceptions. Meanwhile, Jessica became an unexpected source of strength. 10 years my senior, she had navigated her own complex family relationships and emerged with wisdom to share. Families are supposed to be safe places, she told me one evening as we shared takeout Chinese food in our small living room. When they're not, it's not a failure to create safety elsewhere. I tried contacting my mother several times during those first months. Texts went unanswered, emails received brief, cold replies focusing on practical matters. Your meal has been forwarded, or we donated the items you left behind. No inquiries about my welfare. No openings for reconciliation. The rejection continued to hurt, but slowly, incrementally, I began rebuilding. My nightmares, always featuring locked doors and family members turning away, became less frequent. The panic attacks that had once paralyzed me several times weekly now emerged during significant stress. I began recognizing my own resilience, my capacity to survive what had felt unsurvivable. Teresa suggested joining a support group for adults experiencing family estrangement. Initially resistant, I eventually attended a meeting at the community center, sitting silently in the back row, listening to stories that echoed aspects of my own. My mother hasn't spoken to me in 3 years because I married someone she disapproved of, shared one woman. My parents disowned me when I changed religions, offered another. My father chose his new wife over maintaining a relationship with me and my children, said a man in his 40s. Their pain was familiar, but so was their determination to create meaningful lives despite that pain. I returned the following week, and the week after that. Eventually, I shared my own story, was shaking but growing stronger with each word. Through the group, I began understanding that my mother's behavior likely stemmed from her own unresolved issues, possible narcissistic tendencies, certainly control issues, perhaps undiagnosed anxiety. This didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me stop internalizing them as reflections of my worth. 6 months after the text that shattered my world, I found myself in a surprisingly stable place. I had been promoted to shift supervisor at the daily grind, increasing my hourly wage. I had enrolled in online business courses to complement my English degree, hoping to eventually move into publishing administration. I had friends, not just Amber and Jessica, but people from work and the support group who genuinely cared about my well-being. Most importantly, I was beginning to redefine home on my own terms. Home wasn't necessarily the house where I grew up. It wasn't even my small bedroom at Jessica's apartment. Home was creating spaces, physical and emotional, where I felt safe, accepted, and valued. I was building that for myself, one difficult day at a time. I still carried the pain of rejection, still puzzled over how a mother could discard her child so completely. But gradually, I was learning that family could be chosen as well as born. And the family I was carefully, intentionally building around me would never require me to sacrifice my dignity for belonging. 6 months became 9, then a year. Spring arrived again, bringing with it not just flowers, but a sense of personal renewal I hadn't expected to feel. My life had found a rhythm that felt sustainable, even occasionally joyful. My promotion to shift supervisor had evolved further. Tanya had named me assistant manager, trusting me with scheduling, inventory, and training new hires. The coffee shop had become more than just employment. It was a community where I belonged, where my contributions were valued. The online business courses had proven surprisingly engaging. I discovered an aptitude for marketing and digital communications that complemented my English degree perfectly. A small publishing house in town had even hired me for 10 hours weekly as a social media coordinator. My first foot in the door of my chosen industry. My room at Jessica's apartment now truly felt like mine. Plants thrived on the windowsill. I chose and hung on the walls. Books, some salvaged from my past life, others newly acquired from the bookstore downstairs, filled the built-in shelves. I had created a space that reflected who I was becoming, not who I'd been told to be. Most significantly, I had developed what Teresa called chosen family, people who supported me not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. Amber remained a steadfast friend. Jessica had become like an older sister. My support group provided understanding no one else could offer. Colleagues, classmates, neighbors, each relationship a thread in the new safety net I was weaving for myself. I still thought about my biological family, of course. The pain had transformed from acute to chronic, no longer debilitating, but present, a delicate that occasionally flared during holidays or significant milestones. I had stopped attempting contact after months of rejection or minimal response. Teresa had helped me understand that continuing to seek connection from those who repeatedly denied it was a form of self-harm. Your healing can't depend on their acknowledgement. She had explained, it has to come from within you and from healthier relationships. I was working on accepting this truth when the unexpected happened. On a rainy Tuesday morning, I received an email from an unfamiliar address, linder.martinez@gmail.com. The subject line read simply, "Your Aunt Linda, Diana's sister." My heart raced as I opened it. I had met Aunt Linda only a handful of times throughout my childhood. She and my mother had a strained relationship, the details of which were never explained to me. "Dear Rachel," the email began, "you may not remember me well, but I'm your mother's younger sister. I recently learned about the situation between you and your family, and I felt compelled to reach out. If you're open to connecting, I'd love to meet for coffee. There might be context about your mother that could help you process what happened. No pressure. I understand if you're hesitant." I stared at the screen, emotions churning. Was this a trap? Had my mother put her up to this? Or was it a genuine extension of family connection? When I'd assumed all bridges were burned, after consulting with Teresa, I decided to meet Linda at a neutral location, a cafe across town from the daily grind. I arrived early, claiming a corner table where I could watch the door, half expecting my mother to appear instead. But it was Linda who entered, shorter than I remembered, with the same dark hair as my mother, but softer features and a more casual style. She spotted me immediately, approached with a tentative smile, and asked if she could hug me. The warmth of human contact from someone who shared my blood brought unexpected tears. "You look wonderful," she said as we sat down. "I'm so sorry about what happened. How did you find out?" I asked. "Mom and I aren't exactly in contact," Linda sighed. "Mrs. Patel, your old neighbor, she's friends with my coworker. Small world. She mentioned seeing you collecting your things that day, and eventually this story made its way to me. I've been trying to find you for months." The idea that someone had been looking for me, wanting to connect rather than disconnect, was powerfully moving. "I need to tell you something about your mother," Linda continued. "Not to excuse what she did, but to help you understand. Diana and I grew up in a highly controlling household. Our mother, your grandmother, was extremely rigid about cleanliness, appearances, behavior. She would regularly purge our belongings without warning if we didn't meet her standards." I listened, stunned, as Linda described a childhood that sounded eerily familiar. A mother who entered rooms without knocking, who read diaries, who created arbitrary rules and punished perceived infractions with rejection and emotional withdrawal. "When I was 17, Linda said, I was locked out just like you were. I came home from a friend's house to find my things on the porch, and the lock changed. My crime was getting a B in chemistry." "What did you do?" I asked, seeing my own experience reflected in my aunt's past. "I lived with friends until graduation, then moved across the country for college. I've spent years in therapy understanding how our upbringing affected me." She reached for my hand. "Diana never got the help. Instead, she internalized our mother's behaviors. She became what hurt her." The revelation didn't immediately heal my pain, but it provided context I'd been missing. My mother's controlling behavior, her obsession with appearances, her conditional love, these weren't personal rejections of me, but manifestations of her own unhealed wounds. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I want you to know. It's not your fault, Linder said firmly. Nothing you could have done would have been enough. The problem isn't you. It never was. And you deserve to know that you have family who cares about you. Over the following months, Linder and I developed a cautious relationship. She lived 2 hours away. That made the drive monthly for our coffee meetings. She shared family stories I'd never heard, photos I'd never seen, perspectives on my mother I'd never considered. She became a bridge to my past without dragging me back into its toxicity. Through Linda, I gained insights into generational patterns of control and rejection. I saw how my mother had replicated her own painful childhood, how Greg had enabled it through passivity, how Madison had been shaped by the same dysfunctional system, but with different results. Understanding didn't erase the hurt, but it helped me contextualize it, place it within a larger narrative than just my personal failure. Approximately 15 months after my eviction, another unexpected encounter occurred. I was selecting produce at the grocery store when I heard a familiar voice say my name. I turned to find Greg, my stepfather, standing awkwardly beside the tomato display. Rachel, he repeated, looking simultaneously relieved and uncomfortable. I thought that was you. My instinct was to walk away, protect myself from further rejection, but curiosity won out. Hi, Greg, you look well, he offered. Healthy, I am. Working as assistant manager at the Daily Grind, taking business courses. The information tumbled out before I could consider whether he deserved to know it. He nodded, shifting his weight. That's great, really great. An awkward silence fell. Finally, he spoke again, voice lower. What your mother did, what we did, it wasn't right. I wanted you to know I think about that a lot. The acknowledgement, however belated, loosened something tight in my chest. Why didn't you stop it? He looked down. I've asked myself that every day. Fear, I guess, cowardice. Your mother can be difficult when challenged. That's not an excuse, just the truth. Is she still the same? I couldn't help asking. Actually, no. After you left, things got worse before they got better. Her behavior became more extreme until even Madison complained. We started therapy, separately and together. Diana was diagnosed with severe anxiety and some personality disorder traits. She's been working on it, taking medication. He paused. She knows what she did was wrong, Rachel. She's not ready to face you yet, but she knows. I absorbed this information, unsure how it made me feel, vindicated, relieved, still hurt. I'm not asking you to forgive us, Greg continued. I just wanted you to know that your leaving forced some changes that needed to happen, and I'm sorry I didn't protect you. We parted with no promises of reconciliation, just a brief, awkward hug and his business card pressed into my hand in case you ever want to talk. I didn't contact him immediately, but I didn't throw the card away either. It sat in my wallet. A potential bridge I wasn't yet ready to cross, but no longer needed to burn. As my second year of independence approached, I found myself in a place I couldn't have imagined during those dark days sleeping on Amber's couch. I had been accepted to a business administration program I could complete while working. The publishing house had increased my hours, impressed with my social media results. Jessica and I had renewed our lease, our roommate arrangement evolving into a deep friendship. Most importantly, I had developed a relationship with myself based on acceptance rather than criticism. I could leave dishes in the sink occasionally without anxiety. I could define my own standards of success rather than chasing external validation. I could recognize my worth separate from anyone else's assessment of it. My new apartment with Jessica felt like a genuine home, not because of its physical features, but because it housed people who respected each other's boundaries and celebrated each other's growth. We had movie nights and dinner parties. We supported each other through bad days and applauded good ones. We created the family atmosphere I had always craved, but never experienced under my mother's roof. The text that had once shattered my world. Locks changed. You don't have a home. anymore had ultimately freed me to discover what home truly meant. Not a physical building with conditional acceptance, but connections built on mutual respect and genuine care. Not perfect people who never made mistakes, but imperfect ones who acknowledge them and work to do better. Would I ever reconcile with my mother? I didn't know. Linda's insights and Greg's apology had opened possibilities I previously couldn't consider, but I no longer needed reconciliation to feel complete. I had built something valuable from the wreckage of rejection, a life authentic to who I was, relationships that nourished rather than depleted me, and the knowledge that I could survive what once seemed unsurvivable. Sometimes losing what you thought was home leads you to where you truly belong. Sometimes the most painful endings create space for the most authentic beginnings. And sometimes the family who truly loves you isn't the one you were born into, but the one you create through conscious choice and commitment. Have you ever experienced rejection from someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally? How did you rebuild afterward? Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience. Your support means everything as we navigate these difficult human experiences together. Remember, wherever you are in your journey, you're not alone, and you are always worthy of genuine love and respect.